The fluorescent lights flickered as a rush of cold water burst from the damaged pipe, drenching Mike Rivers' arm up to the elbow. He winced but didn't flinch, tightening the wrench until the furious leak stilled. Across the hallway, a class of karate students drilled precise kicks and blocks behind the dojo's glass wall. 9-year-old Lily Hawthorne pressed her small face against the pain uniform, crisp, but backpack too big. Heart pounding with the desperate hope of being noticed. Then Coach Price barked over the rhythmic thuds and grunts. "Unless you're here to mop the mats, move along." His tone cut through the air like a blade, and the children snickered in unison. Mike straightened water dripping from his arm and met Lily's wide-eyed gaze for the first time. In that charged moment, a silent resolve passed between janitor and child. Neither would back down. If you believe true courage can come from the most unexpected places, drop a comment with your own story of standing up when no one expected it. And don't forget to subscribe for the next parts of Mike and Lily's journey. Mike Rivers crouched low beneath the sink in the narrow dojo hallway, the cacophony of kiais and leather-on-mat thumps muffled by the steel door. His cold arm trembled from the spray of icy water, but his grip on the wrench was unwavering. He'd fixed busted faucets in rundown Navy bases, patched leaks on oil rigs, even wrestled with broken pipes in hurricane-battered neighborhoods, but nothing had prepared him for the sting of humiliation echoing just feet away. Through the small glass window set into the dojo door, a line of karate students moved with mechanical precision. Their white gis were spotless belts knotted in neat symmetry. At the front, Coach Price barked corrections in a voice that brooked no dissent. Mike caught fragments. "Too slow, Thompson. Feet on the ground, Lee." And then contempt. "Hey, janitor, unless you're planning to mop the mats next, get out of our way." A ripple of laughter followed, an almost polite collective chuckle that felt more like barbed wire than mirth. Mike's chest tightened. He felt the heat of anger, but he didn't rise. Instead, he reached deeper into resolve. In the corner of his eye, he saw Lily Hawthorne huddle against the wall, her little fingers curled over the edge of the frame. The girl was small for 9, but her eyes were fierce embers as if she dared herself to step inside. He closed his eyes for a fraction of a second and silently counted to 5. Then he cleaned his face, wiped his hands on his shirt, and stood. Water dripped from his sleeve in skinny streams. The dojo's linoleum was warm from the kids' movements. Sweat shimmered in Price's hair. Mike set the wrench aside squarely in his toolbox and straightened his shoulders. He would fix that pipe in a moment. First, he would shut down this mockery. He stepped out from under the sink, the door swinging open with a harsh squeak. The class paused mid-ki. Coach Price never bothered to turn. His words were weapons aimed over his shoulder. "This is the parents' viewing area," Mr. Rivers, the coach, called. "Please don't block the door again." Mike inhaled, drawing the scent of sweat and floor cleaner into his lungs. "She wasn't blocking the door," he said, voice calm but firm. Lily froze at his side, wide-eyed. Price finally spun around, eyes narrowing. "Move along," he snapped. Mike didn't budge. "She's here to watch," he said, "just like anyone else." The students shifted uncomfortably, some lowering their heads. Mike turned his head to meet Lily's gaze. She trembled but didn't look away. He saw in her face the same hunger he'd felt when he first tried karate in the barracks years ago, an itch to belong, to stand solid and unafraid. Coach Price laughed an attempt at humor that fell flat. "Look, Plumber, this is about presentation. We expect you to wear a belt, not your greasy overalls, otherwise we'll have to reschedule repairs for after practice." His heels clicked on the floor as he approached. The dojo's artificial light glinted off his black belt, the symbol of his authority. Lily's grip on her book bag tightened. Mike noticed and stepped between her and the coach, a living shield. "Why don't you worry about the kids here learning discipline," he said, "and let me do my job?" A hush fell. Coach Price's nostrils flared. Then from the elevated balcony, a new voice cut in. "Coach Price, you'll apologize." It was crisp, measured enough volume to stop a class mid-stretch. All heads snapped upward. Laura Bennett, the academy's owner, descended the stairs in a tailored blazer, her expression as unreadable as steel. Price's shoulders sagged. "Ms. Bennett, I was just—" Now she said, her tone absolute. The class stood at attention. Even a couple of moms in the viewing area held their breath. Price forced a tight smile. I apologize, Mr. Rivers. Didn't mean to offend. Mike raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Laura turned to the students. You'll practice your kata in 10 minutes. For now, everyone break. She glanced at Lily. If you want to stay and observe, you may. Lily stiffened, then nodded. No longer pressed against the glass, now part of the room. Mike ruffled her hair and quietly whispered, Good girl. She let out a small breath as though relief lifted a weight from her shoulders. They stepped into the hallway together. Mike closed the door, holding it for Lily. The flooding water under the sink and the broken pipe waited, but for once he was eager to get back to them. The sting of mockery had been washed away by a powerful current of respect. As they knelt under the sink again, Mike's thoughts raced not about belts or ranks, but about that brief moment when a single word restored a child's courage. He turned the wrench silent as a promise this was only the beginning. Mike planted his feet and stepped between Lily and the dojo door, the weight of his wet sleeve forgotten as he took her backpack from her trembling fingers. The straps were tangled, the zipper half open, but his hands moved with practiced gentleness, straightening the bag and slipping it onto Lily's narrow shoulders. Her eyes wide, with both relief and residual fear, flicked upward at him. He offered a quiet smile, less a gesture of triumph than reassurance. They moved toward the corner, hearts pounding Lily with hope, lighting her face Mike with a steady resolve in his. But before they reached the hallway, a clear, unerring voice cut through the thrum of practice and dripping water. Coach Price, you will apologize. It came from above, from the balcony where Laura Bennett stood, arms crossed, gaze as sharp as her tailored blazer's collar. The students froze mid-kick and mid-punch, as if time itself had stilled. Coach Price's spine straightened, his practiced smile faltering when he realized who had spoken. He turned slowly, lips parting, and for a moment the entire dojo held its breath. His eyes flicked from Laura to Mike, an unspoken calculation passing between them. Then, clearing his throat, he nodded once stiffly. My apologies, Mr. Rivers, Miss Hawthorne, he said, voice tight. I did not mean to offend. Lily's shoulders loosened in the slightest motion, barely perceptible, and Mike felt a surge of pride wash through him. He met Laura's eyes silently, thanking her for stepping in. She inclined her head, expression unreadable, and then turned her attention back to the class. Discipline begins with respect, she said, voice firm, but not unkind. Everyone take 10 minutes break. Stretch, hydrate, then gather here for curriculum adjustments. As the students spilled onto the mats in a rush of relieved chatter, Coach Price brushed past Mike without a word, heading for the water cooler. The echo of his footsteps faded, replaced by the soft squeak of sneakers and the gentle hum of rumbling pipes. Laura descended the stairs with precise calm, each step measured. She stopped beside Mike and Lily, her presence suddenly intimate, far removed from the distant figure who'd once seemed to live only in office meetings. Lily blinked at her uncertainty and gratitude mingling in her small face. Thank you, Miss Bennett, she whispered, voice hushed, but clear. Laura offered a slight smile, the first warmth Mike had seen on her features. You're welcome, Lily. She knelt to Lily's level. If you'd like, you may stay and observe today's lesson. And Mr. Rivers, she added, looking up at him. You're welcome to stay as well. Her glance was inclusive, inviting. For a moment, the dojo felt larger, brighter, less a fortress of drills and ranks, more a place where anyone with heart could find footing. Mike swallowed the taste of adrenaline, sweet and heady. Thank you, Ms. Bennett, he echoed, keeping his voice steady. He ruffled Lily's hair gently. Shall we? He asked, and she nodded, sliding in beside him. They found 2 folding chairs tucked at the edge of the mats near the viewing glass. Students and parents usually sat there, white plastic seats lined up like sentries, and today Mike and Lily belonged among them. He sat then, helped Lily up so she could perch on her father's knee, her backpack on the floor at their feet. He draped his jacket across the back of his chair, careful to keep his damp sleeve off the vinyl. Laura gave one final nod of assurance, then melted back into the background, ascending a few steps to the balcony where she could oversee the room without intruding. She caught Mike's eye and offered a faint, encouraging smile. Mike met it with a small nod of gratitude, and then both of them turned their attention back to the dojo floor. Coach Price stepped forward again, clipboard in hand, exhaling a slow breath that trembled with recalibrated authority. He cleared his throat, but there was no scorn in his voice now. All right, everyone, he began. Let's run through basics, knee stance, focus control. His eyes lingered on Mike and Lily for just a heartbeat, Then he gestured to the students. Everyone take your places. The children reformed their lines with newfound ease, their movements still precise but warmer somehow. Lily sat with her chin tucked to watch every twist of limb, every pivot and block. Mike felt her pulse against his chest, the same eager rhythm of someone ready to belong. As the group moved into synchronized kata, Mike's gaze flicked to Laura again, half hidden behind the railing. She leaned forward, elbows resting on the balcony edge, watching with inscrutable eyes that nonetheless radiated support. For the first time in a long time, Mike realized that he wasn't just the janitor here, he was part of something bigger, something that recognized a man's worth, not by uniform or title, but by action. Lily whispered, "Dad, can I try?" Her voice was small but brimming with determination. Mike squeezed her knee gently. Soon he replied, "Hold tight, observe how they move." She nodded solemnly, and together they watched as the dojo, once a place of exclusion, breathed and shifted, opening space for both girl and janitor to find their place. The water leak under the sink would wait another minute. This moment charged with possibility was too important to leave behind. The real lesson, Mike thought, had only just begun. Mike eased Lily onto his lap, her small frame settling between his knees, backpack at her feet. The dojo's fluorescent lights hummed softly overhead, obliterating shadows and leaving every face and movement sharply outlined. Behind them, Coach Price cleared his throat, as if to reclaim authority, but Laura Bennett raised a single finger, no louder than a whisper, yet it carried the weight of the entire academy. "Enough," she said, stepping from the balcony with the measured grace of someone accustomed to command. The students froze mid-kick, their GIs rustling as they turned in unison. Even the hissing leak in the hallway seemed to quiet with respect. "You will allow Lily to watch the class from here?" Laura continued, gesturing to the plastic folding chairs. "And Mr. Rivers," she added. Fixing Mike with a glance, "You're welcome to stay as well." A ripple of disbelief passed through Mike's chest. He looked at Lily, who blinked up at him, eyes shining like polished stones. Then he met Laura's calm gaze and felt something shift, a removal of a barrier he'd thought permanent. Coach Price's jaw tightened, but he dipped his head. "Yes, ma'am," he muttered, voice barely more than a brushstroke. He returned to the front of the mats and with a curt wave signaled the class back into motion. The rhythmic thud of bare feet resumed, punctuated by fierce kiais and the slap of fists against padded arms. Lily exhaled a soft gasp of relief. Mike slid a gentle arm around her waist, steadying her as the children paraded through blocks and strikes. She leaned forward, elbows on his forearms, utterly absorbed. His heart swelled at the sight, her small hands clasped together, knuckles white with excitement, her brow furrowed in concentration. Laura stood beside them, her heels silent on the varnished wood floor. She folded her arms and observed Lily with an inscrutable expression. Then she glanced at Mike, nodding once as though acknowledging his unspoken gratitude. Mike forced a tight-lipped smile, keeping his voice low when he spoke. "Thank you," he murmured. "For her." Laura's lips twitched upward in a faint, fleeting smile. "I didn't do it for you," she replied, tone neutral but not unkind. "I did it for them." She pointed to the students now moving in unison, eyes fierce. "Children deserve a chance to belong." Mike met her eyes, his own reflecting both respect and wonder. "You've given her that chance," he said softly, brushing a stray lock of hair behind Lily's ear. The girl's gaze never wavered from the mat, but she twitched with excitement, the first real spark he'd seen in months. Coach Price resumed instruction, barking corrections about hip rotation and foot alignment. Mike watched the students struggle into a synchronized kata, their movements gaining fluidity with each repetition. Lily's shoulders rose and fell in a steady rhythm, her hunger to learn palpable even in her quiet demeanor. Minutes passed in concentrated silence. The leak beneath the sink, long forgotten, continued its steady drip, a gentle percussion beneath the students' crescendos. Mike closed his eyes for just an instant and listened to the harmony of practice breath footfall, oceanic serenity laced with purpose. Lily shifted, and Mike opened his eyes to find her turning her head to look up at Laura. The academy owner returned the gaze, nodding once, her expression softening. Lily mouthed, "Thank you," and Laura inclined her head, the motion graceful and genuine. After another round of drills, Coach Price called for a water break. The students filed off the mats, some panting, others dripping sweat, juggling water bottles and towels. Price gathered them in a semicircle, draped his guy jacket over his belt, then flicked his eyes toward Mike and Lily. "You can sit here," he said, voice grudging but not cruel. He pointed to an empty chair beside the engineer's table. Mike rose and helped Lily down. She landed lightly, then turned to chug from her water bottle goggles of condensation on the plastic. Mike took the chair next to her, tucking his jacket over the back. Laura stepped away from the railing and moved to stand behind them, folding in as silent a guardian as he could imagine. Coach Price addressed the parents in the viewing room, rattling off announcements about the upcoming belt test, the schedule changes, and the new uniform supplier. Somewhere in the torrent of information, Lily set down her water bottle and looked at Mike. "I want to try," she whispered, barely audible. Mike swallowed. He glanced at Laura, whose gaze was fixed on the students warming up again. "Not today," he replied softly. "First we learn." Lily nodded, determination sharpening her features. Mike squeezed her shoulder. "You're a quick study," he said, voice proud. Laura moved to stand beside Mike, folding her hands. "If she's ready," she said, tone calm but firm. "Let's not keep her waiting." Mike blinked. For a moment he thought he'd misunderstood. He looked at Lily down at the water bottle, up into her expectant face. "Are you sure?" he asked. Lily nodded, tightening her knuckles around the bottle. Mike glanced sidelong at Laura, whose expression reflected measured encouragement. "All right," Mike whispered. He rose and held out a hand. "Come on." Lily stepped onto the mat, her bare feet touching the polished wood. The students paused, watching, sensing the shift. Coach Price frowned, but said nothing. Mike followed, standing behind Lily, his frame both protective and excited. Laura descended the stairs to observe at mat-level, eyes never leaving Lily. Mike settled on the sidelines, heart hammering, as Lily knelt and tied her own white belt with careful pride. The world had narrowed to her small hands knotting fabric, the soft rustle of ghee cloth, and the hush of anticipation. Coach Price took a breath. "Stand," he commanded, voice cautious. Lily rose swiveled to mimic the final stance he'd taught earlier. Mike braced himself for ridicule, but none came. Price nodded, watching Lily's balance. He gestured for the class to form a line behind him. One by one, each student performed the first block. Lily mirrored them, slow, deliberate, not perfect, but earnest. The students halted beside her, a living testament to inclusion. Coach Price blinked, then turned to the next step, front kick. Lily hesitated, lifted her leg, and kicked. Her form was shaky, but she finished foot landing on the exact spot Price had designated. A murmur rippled through the students, then a smattering of applause. Mike stood clapping, pride shining in his eyes. Laura cupped her hands and joined in. Coach Price lowered his head, exhaling. "Good," he said, voice quieter than before. "Very good." Lily beamed and looked at Mike, who knelt to meet her at eye level. "See," he whispered, "you belonged all along." She nodded, tears of joy glinting in her eyes. Mike's chest swelled with something fierce and protective as he rose and dropped to one knee, extending his arms. Lily ran into his embrace, gi rustling against his damp shirt. Behind them, Laura watched with a small, satisfied smile. Her intervention had set this in motion, an academy meant for all, not the few. Mike held Lily close, feeling a surge of gratitude for the unexpected protector who'd reached down from her balcony to right a wrong. The dojo's hum resumed richer now for its newfound pulse of opportunity. And for the first time, both Mike and Lily knew that this place, once a cage of exclusion, could become a home of endless possibility. Mike held the door open, and Lily squeezed through into the dojo's open space, her borrowed gi swallowing her slight frame. It hung off her shoulders, sleeves pooled at her wrists, and her white belt dragged on the mat. Every step she took felt precarious, as if she might tumble under the weight of fabric and expectations, until Sophie Reed, the senior student with a dark braid swinging down her back, stepped forward. "Here, let me help." Sophie said, her voice warm and steady. She knelt beside Lily and slipped Lily's arms out of the oversized sleeves, folding the extra cloth so the gi lay more comfortably on her shoulders. Lily looked up, cheeks flushed, and Sophie smiled. "There. How's that?" She handed Lily a neatly folded belt, smaller and tighter. Lily took it with trembling fingers and wrapped it around her waist, looping the knot carefully under Sophie's patient gaze. "Perfect," Sophie said. She rose and offered her hand. "I'm Sophie. I've been here for 12 months. If you need anything, just ask. She gave Lily's hand a light squeeze, and Lily straightened, chin lifting, with a surprise burst of confidence. Mike lingered at the edge of the mats, feeling the soft thrum of momentum as students resumed warming up. Laura Bennett stepped down beside him, standing tall in her blazer, but now wearing sneakers she'd slipped on before joining them. A silent reassurance passed between Mike and Laura, both recognizing how far Lily had come in just minutes. Coach Price's voice sliced across the dojo. Let's begin with basic stances. Everyone form a circle. The students scrambled for position, feet shoulder-width apart, arms lifted in precise guard formation. The circle closed with a few polite bumps of shoulders, and in the center, Coach Price raised his hands. Stance 1, front stance, he called. Lead foot forward, back heel raised. Weight distribution 60-40. Sophie slid into the circle beside Lily and offered her a quick nod. Mike watched Lily's eyes track Sophie's strong legs bending her torso. Lowering arms held firm. Ready, Lily? Sophie asked in a soft whisper. Lily nodded, stepping into the front stance as best she could, her GI billowing. The entire circle paused to let her settle, then Coach Price resumed. Now everyone switch stances on my count. 1, 2, 3. The students transitioned crisply, stances shifting like a well-oiled machine. Lily's switch was slower but spot on, her concentration carved into her young face. Mike felt his chest swell with pride. Laura's gaze met his for a heartbeat. He saw respect there, respect for a girl who'd been told she didn't belong, and for a janitor who'd stood up for her. In that flicker of understanding, the dojo felt less like a fortress and more like a community taking its first breaths together. Coach Price called out the next movement, middle block to low block, demonstrating with exaggerated precision. The students followed. Lily mirrored Coach's motion, her arms swinging down in a neat arc. A few slipped, but she remained steadfast, the GI's fabric rippling with her determination. Good form. Coach Price conceded, voice slightly warmer than before. Let's move to kicks. A hush fell as he led them to crescent kicks and roundhouse kicks in sequence. Sophie demonstrated with fluid grace, and Lily tried to lift her leg, G-sleeve flapping at her knee. She stumbled but caught herself forcing a wobbly kick. Behind her, Sophie gave a quick thumbs up. Lily beamed. Mike saw Laura let out a near-invisible exhale relief mingling with admiration. She tapped her fingers against her clipboard, a habit he realized not a sign of impatience. The class moved into partner drills. One student executes a punch, or block the other responds. Sophie drew Lily aside and took her hand. Let's try together, she whispered. They faced each other. Sophie demonstrated a straight punch to an imaginary chest. Lily returned the motion, her fists floating through the air, but aligned. Sophie gently placed her hand on Lily's wrist, guiding her punch trajectory. Lily's confidence grew with each correction. Coach Price surveyed the pairs and barked encouragement. Keep your guard up, eyes on your partner. But his tone held less edge now, and even his backhanded compliments felt genuine. After several rounds, he called for everyone to sit in Seiza. The students knelt, resting their fists on their thighs, heads bowed briefly before looking up. Mike and Laura sat behind them at the very back of the mat as the room's energy hushed to a low simmer. Coach Price addressed the group. Today you saw how discipline isn't only about power. It's about patience, about teaching someone who's new. You did well. He paused, scanning the circle. Sophie, Lily, stand up. Sophie and Lily rose. Lily's face glowed. Coach Price cleared his throat. Lily observed our warm-up and even participated. Let's give her a round of applause and a warm welcome as our newest junior observer. The class clapped, the rhythm of palms meeting mat echoing. Lily glowed and Mike felt a surge of awe. His daughter, once an outsider, was now celebrated. Laura rose, smoothing her blazer. She stepped forward and placed a hand on Lily's shoulder. I'm proud of you, Lily. You faced your fear, she said, voice carrying softly through the dojo. Lily looked up at her eyes wide before bowing deeply to the class. Laura returned the bow, a moment of equality between child and owner. Mike rose to his feet as the class circled up for one final exercise, partner stretching. Sophie guided Lily into a gentle hamstring stretch. The other students paired off, and Coach Price helped a younger boy with a calf stretch. The tension in the room melted as bodies relaxed, chat breaking out in low, respectful tones. Lily laughed softly when Sophie teasingly pulled her foot further, and the sound was bright enough to slip between the heavy beams overhead. Mike crouched beside Lily, anchoring the pose so she could relax. So he asked quietly, "Thinking about coming back?" Lily nodded, her grin uncontainable. "Yes." Mike glanced at Laura, who was talking quietly with Coach Price. Their conversation was hushed, but the coach's posture had softened under Laura's measured insistence earlier. Mike caught Laura's eye again and offered a grateful smile. Laura gave him a small nod, an unspoken acknowledgement that she'd seen Mike's dignity and Lily's determination. The dojo, once a place of exclusion, had become fertile ground for growth. The sound of stretching limbs and soft laughter rose around them, pulsing like a promise of what was to come. When the warm-up sheet was complete, Lily hopped off the mat, brushing sweat-damp hair from her brow. She turned to Mike. "Can I sign up?" she asked, voice hopeful. Mike stood and lifted her onto his back, piggyback style. "I'll get you registered first thing tomorrow," he said, laughter warming his tone. "Today, let's just celebrate how far you've come." They walked off the mats together, passing under the watchful eyes of students and coaches alike, leaving behind an echo of possibility. The first class had ended, but for Mike and Lily, a new chapter had only just begun. Mike followed Lily off the mats and into the hallway, leaving behind the thump of bare feet and the sharp snap of practiced ki-eyes. Lily's steps were steady now, no more dragging G-pants, no more hesitant shuffles. Each stride carried her forward with an unspoken resolve, as if she claimed the floor beneath her boots the same way she'd claimed a place on the dojo mat. Mike watched her, the soft echo of her heels on the smooth linoleum like a heartbeat matching his own. He couldn't help but smile. "You know," he said quietly, "you walk like you belong." Lily glanced up, surprise blooming in her dark eyes. "I do," she said, voice strong enough to make him swallow. They rounded a corner and nearly ran into Laura Bennett, who stepped out of her office's open door. Laura had traded her heels for sneakers by now, sleeves rolled up, but her posture remained impeccable, straight-backed and assured. She paused in her tracks to watch Lily pass head-high, shoulders back. The corners of her mouth twitched upward. Mike offered a nod of greeting. And better. "She's learning fast." Laura's gaze slid to him, and Mike felt that familiar spark of mutual recognition. She saw him, the ex-Marine janitor who fixed pipes by day and protected his daughter's dignity by night. He saw her, the academy founder, who built an empire of martial arts instruction, but kept her heart perfectly poised between compassion and ambition. They lingered in the hallway, the hum of distant practice rooms behind them fading into comfortable quiet. Mike folded his arms. "Thank you," he said, meeting Laura's eyes. "For earlier." He gestured toward the dojo where Price was walking back to his office, head bowed in grudging respect. Laura studied him, her expression unreadable for a moment. Then she smiled, a genuine flicker that softened the lines around her eyes. "You stood up when it mattered," she said simply. "That's more than most people would do." She tucked a stray lock of hair behind her ear. "I wanted someone in that room who'd remind me what it's all about." Mike felt his chest tighten. "Your husband, he intended this place to be more than just kicks and belts," he said. "He wanted a community." Laura's lips quirked. He had a vision, she agreed. One I lost sight of once I started worrying about promotions and profits. She shook her head as though dispelling ghosts. People become names on a roster and numbers on a spreadsheet. I forgot the faces. Mike nodded. "Lily reminded you." He smiled down the corridor at her daughter, who was busy tying her own backpack strap, already planning the next class. "She's a good reminder." Laura's gaze softened as she watched Lily. "She's brave," she said. "Not everyone has the courage to keep trying after they stumble." She turned back to Mike. "You have courage too. You didn't flinch when Price humiliated you." Mike shrugged, looking away. "It's just my job." Laura shook her head. "It's more than that." She stepped closer. "You recognized a wrong and fixed it, not with force, but with quiet strength." Her voice dropped slightly. "I needed to see that again." A sudden hum of activity spilled into the hallway as students and parents drifted past, returning water bottles and towels. Mike and Laura let them pass, neither urging the other onward. In that pause, they stood side by side, two people from different worlds united by shared purpose. Lily finished fastening her bag and skipped over to them. "Daddy, Can I come back tomorrow? She asked, eyes wide. Mike crouched and took her hand. Yes, kiddo, he said. We'll be back bright and early. Laura's eyes flicked between father and daughter. She reached out and gently patted Lily's shoulder. I look forward to it, she said. We have a lot to teach and to learn. Lily grinned. I can't wait. As they walked down the corridor together, Mike with one hand on Lily's backpack, Laura beside them. Mike felt the weight of something new settle in his chest. The dojo had shifted beneath his feet, opening a door not just for Lily, but for him and for Laura, too. They were no longer janitor and owner. They were allies in the same mission to rebuild a martial arts community where every child could find the courage to belong. In the soft glow of the hallway lights, Mike glanced at Laura. Want to grab a coffee after we lock up? Laura smiled, a spark of warmth in her eyes that he'd rarely seen in her boardroom persona. I'd like that, she said. And for the first time in years, Mike felt an unfamiliar kind of excitement. One that had nothing to do with fixing leaks or facing bullies, but with the promise of partnership and possibility. The real work, he knew, was only just beginning. Mike felt the room shift before he even set foot on the mat. The students had been settling into partner drills, some practicing blocks, others warming up for sparring, but as Coach Price stepped forward with a clipped, "All right, Mr. Rivers, show us what you've got," the murmur of chatter died. He spoke loud enough so every child, every parent in the viewing area, and even the janitorial crew peering in from the hallway could hear. The challenge wasn't an invitation, it was a gauntlet. Mike paused, the front of his gray-blue gi slightly damp from sweat and the day's chores. He glimpsed Lily perched on Sophie's shoulders near the glass wall, eyes wide but shining with pride. Laura Bennett stood beside him, arms folded, expression unreadable. The entire weight of the dojo bore down on him, expectant, curious, skeptical. Coach Price cracked his knuckles and adopted a classic fighting stance, feet shoulder-width apart, arms raised at chest level, a snap of tension in his black belt. He'd been the Academy's star pupil state champion in his youth, flawless in technique and flair. Mike knew the reputation. Price's spinning kicks arced like scimitars, his punches snapped with textbook precision. He was built to dominate a sparring ring. Let's make it interesting, Price said with a smug half-smile, the kind that said, I've already won. He bobbed on his toes, ready to explode. I'll start slow. Throw something at me. Mike let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. He stepped forward into the center of the mat. The floor felt solid beneath his feet, an anchor. He bowed to Price, an old Marine habit of respect before engagement, then pressed palms together before his chest, a gesture Price neither expected nor appreciated. The dojo lights gleamed off rows of gi and belts, an audience waiting for the spectacle. Price lunged first, a right roundhouse kick aimed at Mike's shoulder. Mike didn't raise his arms or tighten his guard. Instead, he shifted his weight, pivoting on his lead foot and letting the kick slice harmlessly through air that had been seconds ago his own space. He let Price's momentum carry him forward, hooking Price's ankle with a subtle foot sweep that disrupted his balance without sending him sprawling. Price blinked, his leg going out from under him, and he stumbled forward in a rare moment of ungoverned motion. Mike dropped into a low stance, bracing, guiding Price's shoulder just a nudge, until Price's own momentum brought him upright again. The students gasped. Lily's hands flew to her mouth. Even Laura's stoic face cracked with surprise. Price blinked, stare wild for a heartbeat. Then he grinned, part frustration, part exhilaration. He pivoted and unleashed a rapid combination jab, cross-hook, low kick. Mike absorbed nothing with a block or parry. He simply flowed. He sidestepped, the jab glided around the cross with the faintest lean spun inside the hook to eliminate its arc, and took a half-step diagonally back as the low kick whistled past. Each move was minimal, each shift economical. No wasted energy, only clarity. He reached out a hand, open, gentle, and touched Price's elbow as the last kick passed. It wasn't a strike. It was a suggestion of leverage. Price's foot caught on the mat, and his arm, guided loosely by Mike's fingers, pivoted him. He spun slightly, knees tightening to keep from falling. Mike held his palm there, soft pressure, just enough to control Price's line of attack, then release no follow-up blow. A hush filled the room. No claps, no exclamations, only the high-pitched hum of tension released. Price regained his stance, breathing heavily. brows furrowed. The echo of his kicks and punches lingered in the air. Mike held his own posture, knees bent, arms relaxed, but ready eyes calm. "Well," Price rasped, voice rough with wonder and annoyance. "You gonna hit me or just play ghost?" Mike said nothing. He lowered into a horse stance for a moment, shifting weight, evenly grounding himself. Then rising slowly, he bowed no arrogance, only respect. He held the bow weighted and straightened. The silence lingered, a testament to what had happened. Price looked around as if seeing the dojo for the first time, the students watching with rapt attention, parents leaning forward on benches, Sophie clutching Lily's hand, Laura's eyes glinting with pride. Price took a labored breath. Then he bowed in return, a stiff, grudging motion that still held the weight of concession. "Well done," he said, voice low. I needed that." The dojo erupted in applause, soft at first, then swelling into enthusiastic claps and cheers. Mike stepped back, heart-racing sweat seeping through his GI. He smiled and gave a small wave to the crowd, then looked at Lily, who was jumping up and down with Sophie hugging her. Mike's chest tightened with emotion. Laura descended the stairs, making her way onto the mats. She approached Mike, her sneakers soft on the polished surface. That, she said, voice calm but resonant, was exactly the lesson they needed. Mike nodded, wiping his forehead with the back of his hand. "Discipline without brutality," he said quietly. "Power without pride." Laura's lips curved. "You reminded me why I built this place," she said, her gaze drifting to Price, who was dusting off his gi with an unsteady hand. It was never about perfect technique. It was about the courage to stand and to teach without hurting. Price stood nearby, listening. He picked at the hem of his sleeve. Then he swallowed. "I'm sorry," he said directly to Mike. "I lost sight of that. I forgot what matters." Mike dipped his head. "Thank you," he replied. "Let's move forward." Price offered a genuine nod, and then not as coach to Janitor, but as equals extended his hand. Mike accepted it, gripped firm, and shook. The contact felt like a truce, the dawning of a partnership based on respect. Laura turned to the class. "Let's finish today's session with partner drills focus on flow, not force." She smiled at Mike. "Care to join in?" she asked. He glanced at her, eyebrows raised, then at the students lining up. Lily's grin was so wide it lit the mat. Mike set aside his reluctance and stepped forward, slipping into a basic front stance. Sophie paired with him, nodding. Lily watched from the edge, pencil and notebook in hand, ready to record. For the next half hour, the dojo hummed with renewed purpose. Price led with a gentler tone, emphasizing control and timing over raw speed. Mike mirrored each motion as the students fed drills around him, a living teaching aid in plain clothes. Laura circled the room, offering pointers, a hip adjustment here, a shift in gaze there. At the end, Mike and Sophie bowed, the circle closed. The dojo felt full and vibrant, no longer brittle with hierarchy, but warm with shared discovery. As the students filtered out, Lily tugged on Mike's sleeve. "Dad," she said softly, "I want to learn like that." Mike crouched, heart swelling. "You will," he promised, starting tomorrow. Laura joined them at the door, slipping back into her boardroom poise. "I'll see you both then," she said with a nod. "Get some rest." Mike and Lily walked into the hallway where the dripping leak waited for its moment, but neither noticed. Their world had shifted on mats made of determination, and hands unclenched, they'd found a new understanding of strength. The real challenge, Mike realized, wasn't mastering kicks or punches. It was living the lesson, moving with purpose, teaching with empathy, and always choosing respect over dominance. And in that echoing dojo, he felt at home. The dojo fell utterly silent. Even the steady drip of the repaired pipe seemed to pause in deference. Students froze mid-motion, parents leaned forward in their seats, and Coach Price's labored breathing echoed through the room. Mike Rivers stood in the center of the mat, arms loose at his sides, chest rising and falling steadily. His GI clung damp around his torso, but he held himself with the quiet ease of someone who'd found his footing. Laura Bennett descended the steps from the observation balcony, her eyes locked on Mike. She moved with the ease of command, every step measured, until she stood before him, the soft mats muffling her sneakers. For a moment, she simply looked at the damp fabric, at Mike's steady gaze, at the dojo's hushed assembly. Then she raised her hand in a gentle arc, silencing even the echoing whispers of awe. Mike Rivers. She began, her voice calm and warm enough to fill the space today. You've shown us something more valuable than any black belt. She paused to let the weight of her words settle, scanning the assembled students, whose faces reflected a spectrum of surprise and respect. True mastery, she said, is not measured by the force of your strike, but by the discipline of your restraint. The gentle murmur of assent rippled through the room, soft nods, a few yes ma'ams and understoods that felt more heartfelt than rote responses. Even Coach Price, arms limp at his side, seemed to bow his head in reverence. Laura continued, stepping toward Mike. I founded this academy on the principle that martial arts is about character as much as combat. Today you reminded us of that principle. She turned to the class. When Price challenged Mr. Rivers, he expected a fight. What he got was a lesson. She shot a glance at Coach Price, who closed his eyes momentarily as though absorbing a bitter truth. A lesson in humility, Laura said. Coach Price opened his eyes, lips pressed together. He took a hesitant step forward. Mike tensed for a fleeting second, but then relaxed as Price approached. The coach's expression was unreadable, no longer the smug authority Mike had faced before, but a man coming to terms with his own pride. I owe you an apology, Price said, voice raw. Every eye turned toward him. I challenged you out of ego, not because I believed in you, but because I needed to prove something to myself, to everyone. You showed me there's a better way. He looked at the students. I lost sight of what matters. Discipline is as much about self-control as technique. He exhaled. Thank you. No one stirred. Then Laura nodded approvingly. Thank you, Coach. She turned back to Mike. And thank you, Mr. Rivers, for seeing Lily's potential when others would have written her off. She touched Lily's backpack resting against Mike's leg, for giving her the chance she deserved. Lily, who had been perched on Sophie's shoulders at the edge of the mat, hopped down and ran to Mike. She wrapped her arms around his waist, pressing her cheek against his damp GE. Mike knelt to return her embrace, and the soft murmur of students and parents wove into a gentle swell of warmth. Laura remained standing, surveying the room that had so recently bristled with tension. Now faces glowed with respect for Mike, for Coach Price's humility, for Lily's courage, and above all for the lesson in what martial arts could truly be. She glanced once more at Mike and Lily, pride softening her usual reserve. In the wake of that silence, the dojo's energy shifted. The same mats that had felt like battlegrounds now felt like a sanctuary, one where mistakes were steps toward growth, not signs of weakness, where children learned to stand tall in a world that so often told them they didn't belong. Coach Price stepped back, pulling his GE into place. He raised a hand. Let's conclude today's session, he said, voice steady. Circle up for our final cool down. The students formed a circle around the mat's shoulders, squared eyes clear. Mike and Lily joined them. Mike kneeling to Lily's level. Lily bouncing in place with excitement. Laura moved to the edge of the circle, hands clasped behind her back. She watched as Price led everyone through gentle stretches, kneeling, hamstring releases, shoulder rolls, deep breathing exercises. Lily stretched alongside the older students, her GI sleeves falling just above her ankles. Mike supported her from behind, albeit more for pride than need. She held her pose with unwavering concentration. The final exercise was meditation, a moment of stillness in which students sat cross-legged, eyes closed, breathing in sync with one another. Mike sat beside Lily, guiding her small hand to rest on her knee. Laura joined in, sitting a few paces away with her heels beneath her spine straight as a bow. Coach Price closed the circle, kneeling at its center. Martial arts, he said quietly, isn't about defeating others. It's about mastering yourself. Today, Mr. Rivers taught us that. Let us remember this moment. His words hung in the stillness. Then the soft chime of the dojo bell rang, signaling the end of class. Students opened their eyes, exhaled together, and bowed to each other, an unspoken vow of respect. Applause broke out, not loud but sincere. Students offered Mike respectful nods. Parents rose clapping. Coach Price handed Lily a brand new white belt, her first official belt, as a token of recognition. Lily's face lit up as Mike helped her tie it around her GE. The circumference was perfect, the knot firm. Laura rose and approached Lily, handing her a small laminated card reading Junior Observer. Lily's eyes widened. She touched the card, then looked up at Laura. Laura flashed a rare soft smile. "Welcome to the Academy, Lily Hawthorne," she said. Lily beamed, losing herself in the glory of inclusion. Mike felt a warmth spread from his chest to his fingertips. He stood and enveloped Lily in a hug. Coach Price and Laura watched expressions softened by the bond forming between father and daughter. Laura cleared her throat, capturing everyone's attention once more. "Class is dismissed," she announced. "Practice persistence, show compassion, and remember that true strength comes from lifting others as well as yourself." Students filed out, chatting excitedly about tomorrow's training. Parents gathered their bags, still marveling at the transformation. Coach Price approached Mike. "I meant what I said," he said quietly. "Thank you." He extended his hand once more, genuine this time. Mike shook it, feeling the friction of cloth as their GIs brushed together. "Thank you," Mike replied, "for remembering." Laura joined them, a nod of unity shared among the three of them. Lily tugged at Mike's hand, urging him toward the exit. "Daddy, can we come back next week?" Mike ruffled her hair. "Absolutely. We'll be here every class you can handle." As they walked toward the hallway, the dojo's doors swung open on silent hinges, no longer barriers, but gateways to possibility. Mike glanced back once at Coach Price and Laura, their silhouettes framed by the glow of the mats. The class's echoes had faded, but the lesson remained: respect is earned not by force, but by integrity, empathy, and the courage to stand firm without striking. In that moment, Mike realized he and Laura, and even Coach Price, had become more than roles in a martial arts academy. They were guardians of something vital, a space where belonging was earned by heart, not by title, where mastery was born not of ego, but of selfless example. And as he and Lily stepped into the hallway's cool air, he knew this dojo was theirs now, all of them together, bound by respect that would echo far beyond the mats. The sun had barely risen when the first notice arrived, a crisp envelope stamped with the Regional Martial Arts Board seal. Laura Bennett stared at the envelope beside her morning coffee, the steam curling in quiet mockery. She'd built Sinclair Academy from the ground up, guided by the promise of discipline and compassion. Now this letter threatened to erase every ounce of that work. Mike Rivers was on his way to fix an air conditioning leak in the back hallway, his daily routine when the front doors clanged shut behind him. He turned to see Laura standing by the reception desk, holding the letter as though it were a ticking bomb. "Morning," he said, brow furrowing at the severity in her eyes. "Not exactly," Laura replied, voice taut. She tore open the envelope with a single motion and unfolded the memorandum inside. "They've revoked our certification," she said, tone hollow. Mike stepped closer, heart nodding. "Revoked." "Just like that." "Effective immediately." Laura read aloud. "All Sinclair Academy access cards are deactivated. The name Sinclair is removed from the regional registry. Any further instruction under our banner is unauthorized. Appeals may be filed, but no operations may continue until reinstatement." Mike's chest tightened. The dojo doors, once open to eager students and proud parents, would now be sealed. He pictured the mat stacked the punching bags, gently swaying in an empty room, the photographs of students' triumphs gathering dust. "Lock the doors," Laura continued. She set the letter on the desk. "We can't let anyone in." Mike swallowed hard. "Is there an actual reason?" "Did we miss some paperwork?" Laura shook her head. They cited non-compliance with standardized rank structure and unauthorized curriculum deviations. The board said we strayed from approved techniques and assessments. She scoffed softly. "As if technique alone defines martial arts." A sudden click echoed from the front doors. Mike's eyes flicked to the automatic lock, engaging the same lock he used every night. Now it felt ominous, a final bar across the place they'd poured their hearts into. Behind them, Coach Price stepped into the foyer, collar crisp, expression clouded. In his hand was a thick stack of papers, legal documents. "I filed suit," he announced, turning to Laura, challenging the board's decision and seeking an injunction. His voice held steel, but Mike caught a flicker of guilt as Price realized the weight of his actions. Laura took the papers, her shoulders tensing. "I appreciate your support," she said. "But this is bigger than a courtroom battle." She looked at Mike. "We've lost our certification. We can't hold classes here, not until they reinstate us, if they ever do." Mike's mind raced. The academy's heartbeat wasn't the board's approval, it was the students' laughter, the sharp snap of GE fabric Lily's shy first bow on the mat. "We can't just let them shut us down," he said. His voice tightened with resolve. Laura met his gaze, the fire in her eyes rekindling. "You're right." She set aside the lawsuit. "We need a plan." Outside, the morning traffic hummed past, oblivious. But inside Sinclair Academy, the world had stalled. Mike and Laura paced the front office, the receptionist's desk now a war room surface for scattered paperwork, enrollment forms, and the revocation notice. "We could host community classes off-site," Mike suggested, voice low. "In the park, a church hall somewhere where the board's jurisdiction can't touch us." Laura nodded slowly, eyes lighting at the possibility. "We'd need to notify parents. Gather mats, sound system, liability waivers." "I'll handle logistics," Mike cut in. He already pictured himself loading mats into his truck, posting flyers at the local grocery store, rallying volunteers. Laura hesitated, then embraced the idea. "And I'll leverage my contacts, media, local council members." We turned this from a setback into a rallying cry. Mike smiled despite the ache in his chest. "It's our dojo, not theirs." Later that afternoon, word spread. Parents trickled in, faces etched with confusion and anger. They crowded the lobby, clutching coffee cups like talismans. A mother holding her toddler asked what was happening. A teenage student slammed down his uniform bag in frustration. Laura stood before them, calm but fierce. "Sinclair Academy has lost its certification," she announced, voice carrying through the murmurs. "But we will not abandon our dojo's heart." She laid out the planned Sunday morning classes in Cedar Park Pavilion, Thursday evening volunteer sessions at the community center, a temporary circle community free to all current students. A ripple of applause greeted her announcement. Mike stepped forward, gripping Lily's hand. She'd come with him to help spread the word. "We'll meet you at the park," he said reassuringly. "Bring your mats, your snacks, whatever you need." A father in the back raised his hand. "What about ranking tests?" Laura exchanged a glance with Mike. "We'll offer skill demonstrations at the end of each month on our terms, not theirs. When the board sees what this community can do, they'll have to take notice." A murmur of agreement swelled to determined nods. The energy in the room shifted from despair to purpose. After the meeting, Mike walked the hallways, each locker, each faded poster, each footprint marking a student's first class. He placed his hand on the doorframe of the main dojo and whispered, "We'll be back." Laura joined him, standing tall in the empty expanse. "This place," she said softly, her gaze sweeping the mats, "it's bigger than any certificate." Mike nodded, a lump in his throat. "It's ours." That evening, as the sun sank low, Mike loaded mats onto his pickup. Lily perched on the fender, giving directions, and Laura handed out flyers at the community center's bulletin board. Neighbors peered from windows, local kids scribbled down times and dates, and the sense of shared mission crackled in the autumn air. Under the park's old oaks on Sunday morning, the makeshift dojo took shape, folding mats on gravel parents, adjusting GI collars, Mike kneeling to show a nervous child how to tie a simple belt knot, Laura greeting news cameras with a calm insistence. They practiced under an open sky block, stances, gentle sparring each kick, a declaration of belonging. No official seal, no board credential, just the sound of determination beating like a drum. In that first class, as Mike guided Lily through her kata with careful patience, and Laura offered quiet words of encouragement to every new face, they reclaimed the spirit of Sinclair Academy. Behind them, the official dojo building stood silent, its doors locked, its registry empty. But the real academy breathed under the canopy of oaks, alive in every stance, every bow, and every shared promise to never let bureaucracy extinguish their dojo's heart. And in the hush before the first kiais, Mike leaned over to Laura and whispered, "Respect isn't granted by a certificate. It's earned in moments like these." Laura nodded. "Let's keep earning it." The door to the old storage wing creaked open on its hinges, revealing a narrow room lined with dust-covered shelves and forgotten equipment. Cardboard boxes sat in haphazard stacks, some labeled holiday decorations, others simply blank as if whoever filled them had long since moved on. Mike Rivers flicked on a single overhead light, its fluorescent glow slicing through years of neglect. He stood to one side, arms folded, listening for footsteps. Laura Bennett stepped in behind him, carrying a stack of 3 folding chairs like they were ceremonial thrones. She set them in a small semicircle at the center of the room, then looked back at Mike and offered a wry smile. "Ready?" Mike exhaled. More than ever. He nodded toward the entrance. "They're coming." One by one, 6 students filed in, 3 older teens still in their GIEs, 3 younger children wearing oversized t-shirts and sweatpants. A handful of parents followed, faces drawn with worry and determination. No one spoke at first. They eyed the makeshift circle and the scattered boxes as though unsure they belonged. Laura cleared her throat using the same calm authority she'd wielded on the dojo floor. "Welcome to the circle," she said. Her voice echoed slightly off the concrete walls. "This isn't a belt test. It isn't a class. It's a gathering, a place to learn courage, compassion, and community without any hierarchy. No black belts. No rank, just us." A gray-haired mother in the back raised her hand. "Is this safe?" she asked, voice trembling. Mike stepped forward, as safe as a promise. He smiled gently. "We won't be teaching you how to punch each other or how to punch at all. We'll teach you how to stand up when it's hard, how to help others when they fall, how to turn fear into strength." He paused, meeting each pair of eyes in the small crowd. "If that's okay with everyone." A quiet murmur of assent rippled through the group. Laura took a slender notebook from her pocket and handed each parent a page. "We're going to start with a simple circle talk," she said. "One of us speaks at a time, sharing why we're here. Then we pass the turn. No judgment, just listening." The students and parents settled into the 3 chairs and along the dusty floor, forming an imperfect ring. A teenage boy named Ramon Guy Collar Frayed sat cross-legged on the ground. He looked at Laura and nodded. Laura motioned to him. "Ramon, would you like to start?" Ramon exhaled and ran a hand through his sweat-streaked hair. I came because karate used to be my safe place," he said. His voice was low but steady. "Then my parents lost my tuition money, and the board shut us down. I felt like I'd lost a piece of me." He paused, glancing at the younger kids. "I don't know how to face that. I just know I don't want to give up entirely." He passed an invisible talking stick to a woman in her 30s, Sophia, whose younger daughter had been on the mat beside Lily. Sophia sat stiffly on one of the folding chairs. "My daughter Itla. She's 6. She's been through more change in her short life than most people see in decades. I signed her up for coaching because I wanted her to feel strong. Now I don't know what to tell her, but I know she cries less when she practices her kicks. I'm here to rebuild that for her." The woman's eyes flicked to her daughter, who squeezed her mother's hand and nodded. Mike offered the little girl a warm smile. The girl looked down, shy but proud. A teenage girl named Emily, who'd once disparaged Lily's place in the class, now knelt on the floor. Her dark braid was messy, and her knuckles bore faint scabs. I was the best," she said, voice rough with emotion. "They told me that so long as I had medals, I mattered. Now I have nothing. I need to remember I'm more than my wins." She blinked back tears. "I want to learn how to be me without them." The raw honesty in her voice hung in the air. A father next to her, arms crossed, spoke up. "I'm here because I couldn't protect my family when they needed me. But I see my daughter in Lily, determined, unbowed. I want to learn how not to fail her again." One by one, everyone shared a mother whose son had flinched at any sudden movement since his accident. A teenage boy who'd never tried sports because he was afraid of not being good. A volunteer who wanted to make a difference in his community. Each confession landed like a pebble in still water, rippling outward. Laura listened, blinking back tears. When the last parent spoke, she closed her notebook and rose. "Thank you all," she said softly. "Courage isn't always a kick or a punch. It's speaking when you're scared. You've all shown courage tonight." Mike stood beside her, steady as a sentinel. Now he said, voice warm and resonant, "We'll try something simple." He stepped into the center of the circle. "I want everyone, students and parents, to stand, form a loose circle, and place your hand on your neighbor's shoulder. No words, just support." Confusion flickered, then compliance. Chairs scraped back, GIs rustled. Hands found shoulders first between kids, then between parents, then between children and adults. In that touch, solidarity formed. Mike looked around: tattoos, brushed t-shirts, bruised shins, brushed patterned dresses. It was a motley assembly, yet united by purpose. A brick wall made of human connection. Mike closed his eyes. "Breathe with me," he said. The group inhaled in unison slowly and exhaled. "When you feel that support," Mike continued, "remember, you can carry someone else. And when you need support, you can lean on them. That is what the circle means." The room held a soft hum, the collective heartbeat of people discovering strength in unity. Laura stepped in front of Mike and bowed deeply, a gesture of respect to the community they'd summoned. Mike returned the bow. The parents and students mirrored them, bowing not to a belt or a board, but to each other. Then, without ceremony, students taught parents a simple stance: feet shoulder-width, knees bent, hands guarding the heart. Parents showed students a breathing technique: inhale through the nose, exhale with slow focus. Laughter rippled through the circle as mismatched pairs stumbled through movements, guiding and supporting one another. No board approval, no accreditation seal, just people learning, teaching, and growing together. The circle was built on something more enduring than paperwork: empathy, courage, compassion. When the hour ended, chairs folded and mats rolled up, the storage wing no longer felt hidden away. It stood transformed, a crucible where fear was confronted and hope ignited. As students and parents filed out, Mike and Laura exchanged a triumphant glance. They'd weathered bureaucracy, reclaimed their dojo's heart, and built a community no revocation could ever erase. Lily tugged Mike's sleeve. "Daddy, can we do this again?" she asked, eyes bright as candles. Mike knelt and hugged her. "Yes, kiddo," he whispered. "We'll keep building the circle, yesterday, today, and every day after." Outside the corridor, lights glowed softly, guiding them back to the main dojo doors. In the hush that followed, the echoes of the first circle meeting lingered: the promise of belonging, the resolve to stand with one another, and the unbreakable bond of a community forged in courage. Mike's phone lit up with another message: accident at 7th Street, minor collision. 1 pediatric. He glanced at the clock: dinner time, and felt a knot tighten in his chest. He told his colleagues he'd step away, then drove to the hospital faster than any traffic law would permit. When he arrived in the ER waiting room, the antiseptic smell burned at his nose, fluorescent lights humming overhead. Laura Bennett stood by the front desk, arms folded, eyes redrimmed but resolute. "Is she okay?" Mike asked, slipping onto the plastic chair beside her. "She's stable," Laura said. "Compound femur fracture. Surgery's gone as well as it could. They're admitting her for observation 2 or 3 days, then weeks of rehab." Mike closed his eyes. His daughter had chased ducks through the park on Sunday morning, fearless. Now she lay under a sheet in a sterile room. He slid a hand into Laura's. "Thank you for being here." Laura squeezed back. "I'm not going anywhere." They followed a nurse into the pediatric ward. White curtains parted to reveal Lily, pale and still hair fanned on the pillow, and one leg encased in a metal brace. She opened her eyes as they entered the corner of her mouth, twitching in a brave half-smile. Mike knelt and raised her hand. "Hey, champ." "Hey, Lily," whispered, voice thin from pain and sleep. "Did you bring my notebook?" Mike patted the bedside table, which sported a stack of picture books, a water jug, and Lisa's handiwork colorful get-well cards from classmates. He pulled a spiral-bound notebook from his jacket pocket, the one she'd been sketching in since the circle began. "Right here." Lily's hand closed around it with surprising strength. "Good. I want to plan our first circle session here." Laura's breath caught. "You're serious?" "Absolutely," Lily replied, eyes gleaming. "We just need yoga mats." And so began the true test. Mike and Laura divided and conquered. On the hospital whiteboard, Laura posted "Circle" in room 12A. Monday, 4 p.m., complete with times and a simple agenda. In the hall, Mike tapped into the volunteer network: students from the dojo, ready to help, counselors eager to lead guided breathing neighbors, offering food and company. Flyers appeared on the bulletin board, handwritten notes framed with hearts and fist-to-palm logos. By Monday afternoon, a small army gathered: 6 martial arts students in GIS, 3 therapists with clipboards, 4 neighbors bringing sandwiches and juice boxes, 2 pediatric nurses curious and kind. As they entered room 12A, they carried yoga mats, folding chairs, and a portable Bluetooth speaker. The carpeted floor replaced dojo mats, but the energy felt familiar. Lily sat propped on colorful pillows, brace still locked into place, notebook open on her lap. She wore her green hospital gown like a kimono, and her hair was braided to the side. A scattering of stuffed animals lined the windowsill. Laura clicked to life, a soft instrumental track, acoustic guitar, and gentle percussion. She motioned everyone to form a circle on mats and chairs around Lily's bed. The room tapped into a hush as if time slowed. Laura spoke first. "This is our circle. We gather to share strength, lean on each other, and practice resilience no matter where we are." She gestured to Lily. "Today's lesson is led by our bravest member." Lily took a breath and straightened her spine. Despite the brace, despite the IV in her arm, she looked every inch a young warrior. "Resilience," she began, "is not about never falling. It's about choosing to get up with help if you need it." She shut her notebook. "Your turn. Who'd like to share?" A teenage student named Ramon pressed forward, balancing on his knees atop a wheelchair, accessible ramp installed earlier. "When I took my first public exam and froze," he said, voice tight. "I thought I'd never speak again. But I walked home, my dad waited, and he reminded me that mistakes don't define us." He paused, scanning the circle. "I'm here to remember I can still stand up." That set the tone, a flood of open hearts in a small hospital room. Parents, counselors, neighbors, even nurses shared quick stories of setbacks, lost jobs, broken hearts, fear of failure, and reaffirmed their commitment to rise. Each confession carried a shudder of vulnerability that only deepened the circle's bonds. After sharing, Laura guided them through gentle, seated stretches, neck rolls, shoulder shrugs, and wrist circles. She led the group in breathwork, inhale, strength, exhale, doubt, while Mike slipped into the corner, supporting Lily as she practiced seated leg lifts to engage her core muscles. The braces rattled slightly, but Lily smiled at her own prowess, counting repetitions aloud. By the end of the hour, the small group gathered in a final moment of silent meditation. Eyes closed, palms resting on knees, breath synchronized like waves lapping at a calm shore. When Laura struck a small chime borrowed from the front desk, the spell broke. Participants opened their eyes refreshed and tethered together by shared experience. Volunteers helped Lily pack her notebooks. Neighbors stacked mats against the wall. Mike and Laura exchanged a look, gratitude, relief, and pride mingling in their expressions. The hospital room, once sterile and forbidding, now hummed with warmth and possibility. As the attendees filed out, one counselor lingered. The circle," she said softly to Laura. "This is something I've never seen. It belongs in every single ward." Laura nodded. "It belongs wherever there's a need." She glanced at Mike, who was helping Lily adjust her pillows. "We'll bring it back to the dojo once we reopen." Lily, arms around her brace, looked at Mike. "When can I stand again?" she asked, determination lining her voice. Mike rubbed her shoulder. "Soon," he promised. "Soon as they let us go home." Outside room 12A, the corridor resumed its rhythm. Distant beeps, medical staff on the move, the steady pulse of hospital life. But inside their small gathering place, a lesson had taken seed. Lily's test her accident, her pain had become an opportunity for the entire community to learn resilience in action. Later that evening, Mike wheeled Lily to the window overlooking the hospital's garden courtyard. The sky had turned a bruised purple, the first stars timidly emerging. Lily traced them with her gaze. "They're still there," she said. Mike nodded. "Always." Laura slipped up beside them, offering each a cookie from a care package she'd arranged. "Tomorrow," she murmured, "we'll practice kicks in the courtyard." "You and Lily." Lily bit into the cookie, chocolate melting at the corners of her mouth, then nodded fiercely. "Definitely." Mike and Laura exchanged one more respectful glance. Lily's leg would heal, but the lesson she embodied, relentless hope, unspoken courage, would endure far beyond any broken bone. And as the hospital lights flickered on, those three figures together formed a circle greater than any they'd drawn on paper, a living testament to resilience, compassion, and community. Sunlight streamed through the high windows of the old hardware store, now transformed into a bustling haven known simply as the Circle Community. Empty tool racks had been replaced with rows of colorful yoga mats, and the walls, once scuffed and gray, now bore fresh coats of pale blue and warm amber, punctuated by a mural of interconnected hands forming a circle. Near the entrance, a library nook offered shelves packed with books on resilience, mindfulness, and martial arts philosophy. It was hard to imagine that just a year ago these walls had stood silent, their doors locked by bureaucratic decree. Today they rang with the thump of bare feet, the murmur of encouragement, and the soft murmur of parents trading strategies on how to raise courageous children. Mike Rivers arrived early, the familiar weight of a gym bag slung over his shoulder. Inside he carried a sense of pride that brimmed from his chest each time he crossed the threshold into this living dojo. He paused at the door, inhaling the scent of fresh paint mingled with the faint tang of sweat and hope. A small bulletin board near the reception desk displayed photographs Lily's first makeshift circle in the hospital room, the grand reopening in Cedar Park, and countless snapshots of students young and old bowing together in gratitude. Morning Mike called Tasha, the on-site coordinator, from behind a simple reception counter. "Marcus is here for his first lesson." Mike nodded. Marcus was a shy 11-year-old with a mop of curly hair and a tentative smile. He'd enrolled last week, encouraged by his mother's discovery of the circle's philosophy. "Bring him in," Mike said, folding back his sleeves. "Let's get him started." In the main hall, mats were laid out in a wide semicircle under a row of exposed beams, repurposed as hanging racks for student uniforms. No ranks were displayed here, only a colorful array of GIs donated by former students who'd outgrown them, each one offering its legacy to the next generation. Mike guided Marcus to the center mat, kneeling to meet his level. "Ready to learn?" Mike asked, voice gentle but steady. Marcus swallowed, wiping sweaty palms. "Yes, coach," he replied, using the title with equal parts reverence and nervousness. First lesson, Mike began, is about finding your balance. He demonstrated a basic front stance, lead foot forward, back foot, at a slight angle weight distributed evenly. "Stomp your feet to the ground," he said. "Feel the earth hold you up." Marcus watched intently and mimicked the stance. The mat wobbled slightly beneath him, but he adjusted, depth growing in his posture. "Eyes forward," Mike added. "Not on me, but on where you want to go." Marcus squared his shoulders, chin lifting. Mike nodded. "Good. Now hold it." He stepped back, arms crossed, and watched Marcus settle into the pose with quiet determination. Laughter and chatter rose behind them as other students arrived for the open class. No belts, no hierarchy, just eager souls, hungry to grow. Mike guided Marcus through a series of slow blocks and gentle strikes, each movement drilled not for force, but for intention. He corrected the boy's hip rotation, offered subtle adjustments on foot placement, and praised every small improvement. "That's it. See the space you're creating," he said after a perfect middle block. From the front of the room, Laura Bennett watched with satisfaction. She'd shed her boardroom blazer for a comfortable cardigan, and soft sneaker sleeves rolled up to reveal inked commitments, community first and strength in kindness. Behind her, a small group of parents had gathered at a row of folding tables for a workshop on fostering emotional resilience in children. A whiteboard displayed talking points: active listening, modeling vulnerability, cultivating courage, and the parents leaned in as Laura guided them through a brief exercise pairing empathy statements with self-care techniques. "Let your children know it's okay to fail," Laura instructed. Voice calm, but filled with conviction. "When they stumble, ask them what they learned, not why they fell. Show them the path, then step back as they walk it." A mother raised her hand and shared how her son had begun journaling after the first circle session, using words to process fear instead of hiding beneath silence. Laura nodded, offering encouragement and suggestions on how to integrate breathing exercises into bedtime routines. In the main hall, Mike led Marcus through a partner drill with another new student. Zeke, a lanky boy who favored science fiction cartoons over sparring. The two stood facing each other, their stances tentative. Mike called out a gentle punch pattern, jab, cross block, and the boys moved with growing confidence. Laughing at each other's mistakes, they found not shame, but camaraderie in trying again, guided by Mike's patient corrections. "Flow with the motion," he reminded them. "Your partner is your mirror, not your opponent." After several rounds, he asked them to bow to each other. The boys hesitated, then mimicked Mike's respectful nod. In that simple gesture, a seed of trust was planted. Mike stepped back, allowing the rest of the class to flow around them. Meanwhile, Laura concluded the parent workshop and strode toward the main hall, clipboard in hand. She slid between the mats just as Marcus landed a solid block on Zeke's slow cross. She smiled and raised her voice. Great work, boys. Remember, strength is an act of kindness, both to yourself and your partner. The students cheered, the energy electrifying the room. Mike felt a surge of fulfillment. This was the dojo he and Laura had dreamed of, a living, breathing community where every punch meant progress, every mistake was a lesson, and every bow whispered gratitude. No legal seal hung on the wall, no certificate emblazoned the registration desk. Instead, the proof of their success lay in the laughter of children learning to stand tall, the nods of parents practicing active listening, and the unwavering resolve that filled every corner of the former hardware store. After class, Mike helped Marcus and Zeke roll up their mats. The other students gathered around, offering to share gear or practice together. Laura approached with a stack of handouts on local support groups and upcoming guest workshops. Meditation, trauma-informed movement, parent-child bonding sessions. She handed one to each family, eyes sparkling. Consider these invitations to keep building, she said. Every one of you belongs here. Marcus beamed up at Mike as they walked toward the exit. Thank you, Coach. I never thought I could do that. His voice brimmed with pride. Mike knelt, placing a hand on Marcus's shoulder. You did it, he said. You found your balance and made it yours. Outside, the Circle community sign glowed warmly in the twilight. Children drifted out with their parents, chatting about the day's lessons. Laura lingered in the doorway, watching as a gentle hush fell over the mats behind her. She turned to Mike, offering a contented sigh. We've come a long way. Mike shouldered his gym bag, glancing at the rows of empty mats, still waiting for the next wave of students. We have, he agreed, and we'll keep going. No seals, no hierarchy, just the Circle. Laura smiled broadly. The Living Dojo doesn't need legal seals. It's sealed here, she said, tapping her heart. And here she added, pointing to Mike and then to herself. They walked down the street together, the once faded storefront now a beacon of belonging. In the distance, the sounds of children's laughter echoed against brick walls and rolling shutters, a reminder that true mastery doesn't come from certificates, but from courage, compassion, and the unbreakable spirit of a community that stands united, one stance at a time. The morning sun slanted through the high windows of the Circle Community Hall, casting a warm glow across the mats where so many had wrestled with fear and found courage. Today marked 1 year since the first gathering in that dusty storage wing, a day when a handful of students and parents had dared to believe in something bigger than bureaucratic seals. Now the hall brimmed with life-clad kids, smartly dressed parents, and volunteers milling about before the ceremony of truth. Bunting of colored fabric hung overhead, and a gentle hum of anticipation filled the air. Mike Rivers stood beside the entrance, adjusting Lily's chair so she could easily follow the ceremony despite her lingering leg brace. His gaze swept the room at the mural of linked hands forming a circle at the library nook, where children thumbed through books on courage, at the long tapestry rolled against the back wall. The tapestry, stitched with care by community volunteers, bore rows of tiny handprints, a living testament to every promise made in the Circle over the past year. Laura Bennett stepped forward in a pale blue blouse and jeans, her phoenix emblem pinned proudly to her lapel. She swept her gaze over the assembled group and raised her hand for quiet. The chatter dimmed and settled like dew. Her voice, calm and resonant, carried across the mats. Welcome everyone to our first annual Ceremony of Truth. Today we honor each other for the courage to show up again and again to this sacred circle. A ripple of applause responded, gentle yet heartfelt. Lily perched on the front row, notebook open on her lap, eyes shining brighter than the morning sun. Mike knelt beside her, his hand resting lightly on her uninjured knee. He caught her eye and gave a small nod. This was her moment. Laura continued, In a world that prizes perfection, we prize persistence. In a world that counts victories, we count the moments we rose after a fall. She turned toward the tapestry. This year, every member of the Circle added their handprint and their vow to this cloth. Now it's time to unveil the patterns of our shared promise. With a dramatic flourish, she pulled aside the protective cloth, revealing an explosion of color. Neat rows of handprints in blues, greens, reds, and golds, each accompanied by a single word: persevere, compassion. Hope, connect, heal. The crowd gasped and leaned forward as the tapestry caught the morning light, every print glowing with the imprint of someone's faith in second chances. Soft murmurs rose. There's ours. Look at Marcus's little hand. I see my mom's print beside mine. Children pointed, adults smiled and nodded, tracing names they recognized. It was as though the wall itself breathed with belonging. Laura stepped back, letting the moment settle before inviting Mike forward. He rose carrying a velvet-lined wooden box. He approached Lily, who had bravely removed her leg brace for the ceremony, revealing a gleaming new limb brace beneath her GI. "Lily," he said, voice thick with pride, "this belt is more than fabric. It's honor through healing." He opened the box to reveal a custom belt of slate gray embroidered in silver thread, with her name and the circle's emblem of interlocking hands beneath a rising sun. Lily's breath caught. "Daddy," she whispered, voice trembling with emotion. Mike lifted the belt gently and wrapped it around her waist, tying the knot securely. "You earned this," he said, meeting her gaze. "Not for how quickly you healed, but for how you taught us all to keep standing." He stepped back, allowing her to adjust the belt. Lily stood taller, spine straight and chest bright, and the crowd erupted into warm applause. Next, Laura stepped toward Mike. She held a small silver pin in the shape of a phoenix, its wings outstretched in flight. "Mike Rivers," she began, eyes shining with gratitude. "You didn't just mend pipes, you mended hearts. You carried this community forward when it felt lost. You learned to teach not by force, but by example. For that it is my honor to pin you with the phoenix emblem, symbol of rebirth, resilience, and hope." She fastened the pin to his jacket, the metal catching the light like a promise. Mike lowered his head, humbled. Applause followed louder this time, echoing against the walls. Parents rose, students cheered, and for a moment Mike felt weightless, buoyed by collective respect. Then Laura called for silence once more. "We close today with our vows spoken aloud together," she said, lifting a hand toward the tapestry. "On the count of 3, speak the circle's promise, I will show up." Mike glanced at Lily, whose eyes glistened with unshed tears. Laura's fingers fluttered, and the community drew in a collective breath. 1. The word echoed softly as everyone inhaled deeply. 2. The tension cracked like a dawn chorus. 3. I will show up. The hall reverberated with that vow, a unified chorus of voices, young and old, each infused with conviction. I will show up. Again they repeated, voices stronger, more certain. I will show up. When the last echo faded, silence fell thick, sacred. It was the sound of truth settling like fine dust on every soul present. Laura stepped to the side and gestured toward the exit. "Class is dismissed," she announced, her voice quiet but firm. "But remember, our circle doesn't end here. It continues wherever you choose to stand true." Students and parents rose, some lingering to touch the tapestry, others exchanging hugs or solemn nods. Lily hopped down from her chair and ran to Mike, wrapping him in a fierce hug. "Thank you," she whispered, voice muffled against his chest. Mike held tight. "Thank you for leading us," he replied. Laura approached, hand outstretched. Mike released Lily and shook Laura's hand, the phoenix pin warm against his jacket. "Thank you," he said simply. Laura smiled, something soft and real that no boardroom had ever elicited. "No, thank you." She looked around at the departing families. "We built this together." As the circle community emptied into the sunshine outside Mike, Lily, and Laura paused at the door, the mural of connected hands shimmered behind them. Lily reached out to trace one of the prints with her fingertip. "This is where we belong," she said. Mike knelt beside her, placing an arm around her shoulders. "This is home," he echoed. Laura slipped her arm around Mike's other side, forming a small group. The tapestry flapped slightly in the breeze as they stood in quiet triumph. No certificate hung on these walls, only the brilliance of human spirit, the tapestry of handprints, and the unbreakable promise to always show up. And as they gazed at the sunlit community they'd nurtured, they understood the light guiding every home, every heart, was not a piece of paper, but the courage to rise again day after day in truth and compassion.